All righty. Guys, thank you for joining another Bondex Talks. Today we're actually joined by Apurv from Intract. And Apurv, I wonder if you would just want to go ahead and just give a quick introduction to yourself.
Yeah. Hey guys, great to be here. Thanks a lot, Paul, for the invite. Apurv this side. I'm one of the co-founders at Intract. It's a leading quest platform which has around 5 million plus verified users that essentially look for early products to engage with. And yeah, I think we're in touch with the Bondex team for a while, helping them with some of their activations. And I know Paul personally. I love his Web3 marketing DAO stuff. So yeah, that's a quick introduction about myself.
Awesome. Thanks for the flex as well there, Apurv. That's great. Today, guys, we want to dive into all things kind of Web3 community. And I think what's really interesting about Intract, Apurv, is really the amount of projects that have kind of come your way and the amount of projects you've seen. I think I saw something that you've had 12 million users, 1.5 million NFTs, and around about $200 million of rewards claimed. I'm sure I'm missing some other stuff as well, but some really impressive numbers coming from Intract. I'd love to kind of dive in today around how communities are being built, what you're seeing, but maybe just actually start with Intract. What are what's happening right now in Intract? Give us a picture of what's going on behind the scenes there.
Yeah, sure. So I think as a natural evolution of our product and our community, I think we've heard a lot of feedback around some of the things we're building, right? So Intract started as a questing platform. We had our biggest partnership with Polygon, ZK, then went on and did a big activation with Linear, Starknet, Tabi, Mode, Scroll, all the major layer 2s that you kind of know in Web3, right? And during that time, we also had a lot of apps and the applications working with us. And over time, I think we have fairly stabilized into our traffic. So as you mentioned, 12 million users in lifetime. I'll say 5 million of them are verified on our platform. And then there's a weekly active user base of roughly 1 million users who visit our platform from time to time, right? That's roughly the current traction on the user side. On the business side, around 100 companies every single week come to our platform looking for promotions. We kind of curate and only allow around 40, 50 to go through because some of them are spam. So that's at least on the business side, the current traction, right? And in terms of what's happening right now, two major themes of this. The first theme is just making sure that for a company, when you acquire users or grow your community, you're getting real authentic users. And a lot of builds around that, proof of humanity, user credentials, something like a token holding propensity score, right? So for example, if you hold the token, then you get a score that's additionally, more than otherwise, these kind of things. So that's like one entire set of builds, which is more company and community focused, helping developers find their true fans. And on the user side, I think the major focus is on improving the user experience of discovering new products. And there are so many things that are built out there. So we have an alpha feed where you kind of get a daily crypto news. Then similarly, there's an entire search engine that we built out using AI where you can search and then just 2-3 letters or words you find your campaign. We're launching soon on Ton, so we're Ton interface launching pretty soon. And in fact, some alpha, right? So we're launching Intern. Intern is basically an AI assistant. So you kind of ask questions to Intern, it kind of directs you to the right kind of resources all over the internet, including some of our quests, but not just that, even Twitter, even Forecaster, blogs, governance portals, those kind of things. So kind of like a chat GPT, but fine-tuned for discovery of new products in Web3.
Interesting. So in terms of that AI solution that you bring in there, that's to help users basically find the upcoming projects and get to the kind of the scope of them.
Yeah. So we spoke to a lot of users, right? And they were they just went on searching on our naive search bar, how to basically latest DeFi project that has raised say $100 million, right? And then that behavior was prominent. So we're like, why don't we extend the journey and give you answers that are relevant? Because today you couldn't find anything on our platform if you search something like that. So that's essentially how this kind of came into the picture. And we are testing it with a few influencers right now and getting some very good feedback on that. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And so the outcome of that will be a user will basically get early signals on the hottest projects that are coming through. I'm assuming that would be some sort of...
Yeah, I think whatever you search, right? So for example, if you search, give me a listed token product that, is doing some revenue, and then we maybe give you something like a 1inch or a Uniswap as well. If you're looking for airdrops, whatever you want to search, right? But yeah, I think at the end of the day, given most of our users are early adopters, so a lot of our search is curated towards the new products and not necessarily the most mature projects, but you can definitely search and still get an output. Kind of like you have Grok on Twitter, but it's more tuned to the Web3 space than Grok. Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, it's really interesting. Interesting as well, like a lot of companies launching AI. And I think one of the things that I'm seeing a lot is, AI is great generally, but where it gets really powerful is when you start training it on certain sets of data, honing it in, and then kind of training it to perform specific use cases. Because right now, almost like an agent, I see that, term used a lot. It's kind of these custom agents that people are building. Really interesting. It's really interesting as well that you're actually recognizing a demand coming from the community as well, saying, okay, the community are demanding this, let's just go ahead and build something. I've just skipped ahead as well. I'd actually like to just maybe just go kind of top line. Apurv, I went through a bit of your background. So, you've got a really interesting background, chemical engineering degree, and it's really interesting. We have a lot of our audience in a position where they have a degree, they're looking to get into this space. I myself have been into the position as well of like no background whatsoever in Web3, but I love the tech. And your journey is you've kind of gone from a chemical engineering degree to now co-founding one of the prominent Quest platforms. Great time, by the way, because Quests, they're very much in for 2024. So I feel like that is a journey that I'd love you to fill in the blanks around that. And maybe if you can tailor it to someone who might be in a similar position as well, of background in something not really relevant to Web3, or maybe it is, and how that journey has progressed.
Yeah, definitely, right. So I get asked this question quite a lot. How did you move from chemical engineering to something in Web3? And to be honest, I kind of started investing in Bitcoin and Ethereum back in 2017, 18. Not much, just a little bit using centralized exchanges like Binance. That was my first introduction to crypto, not necessarily Web3. And then kind of just, faded away when I ventured into my very first company. So I'm like a second time founder. The first time the company didn't work out, but that was an amazing experience. Probably the first time I built a community of students and kind of teaching them how to learn concepts that are very practical and not necessarily very theoretical. So that's when I kind of also upskill myself in education and theory around it. So that's at least been one of my core pillars going forward, that I try to learn new things using that entire theory that I learned. And that has been one of the major catalysts towards venturing into Web3 so easily. But anyways, once the startup didn't work out, spent some time at McKinsey and Company. I was a consultant there doing some fancy digital transformation, which basically means building apps for banks. Didn't really like it, wanted to be more involved in the tech and the implementation. And that's when, a couple of my friends from the same university, they were like, let's just jump into building something of our own. And Web3 at that point was something that was on top of our mind, because we have been seeing the whole NFT craze, the DeFi craze going on. So for the next 2 to 3 months, we just spent time talking to people in the space. So we kind of bombarded around 200, 300 people on LinkedIn, Twitter, where we could find them, and try to have conversations. And those conversations were primarily the very first set of drivers about us understanding the practical aspects of Web3. While parallelly, we were going through our theoretical learning using platforms like Binance Learn. Then we also have Whiteboard Crypto, one of the best YouTube channels out there to get into Web3. And those were at least those 2-3 months when it just took us time to understand and warm up to the space. Although, in hindsight, that was just still theoretical learning. Once we really got to building Intract out, that's when for the next 7-8 months, we actually learned Web3. So we kind of internally had a small budget that we assigned to every team member. And we were like, we'll spend that on doing on-chain activities. So we had like an onboarding flow where you have to download MetaMask, do these 5 things, mint an NFT, play an Axie Infinity game, these kind of things. So we tried all of that end to end. That's how we got into being more practical about web. So that's been my journey. It's been very do it yourself, trial and error. And right now, the way I look at this year, every single day I have enough dose of crypto Twitter. And then at the same time, I have other people who are looking at different sectors of Web3 in my friend circles, in my community, that I kind of engage with regularly. So that's at least my way of sort of entering into Web3 and how I decided to jump into Web3. To be honest, when I was entering Web3, it was still more crypto. But when I got into it, when I understood exactly what the promise of decentralization, permissionlessness, trustlessness is when I kind of really got excited. And then I have actually been reading books from thought leaders like Vitalik, Andres Antopoulos, which has really helped me also connect to the ethos of the space. And that has been instrumental in driving my energy towards building best products in the space. Because while you can be a trader or DeFi enthusiast, unless and until you relate to the Web3 ethos, it becomes difficult for you to be agnostic to the market volatility that's there, right? I mean, 2 days ago, we were somewhere else. So that's at least been my journey till now.
Yeah, I mean, 2 days ago, you're right. It's been quite a bounce back already, hasn't it? I think a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
people were expecting more of a bloodbath. It's really interesting. I feel like you obviously looked at the market and almost with an open mind, from what I'm hearing you say, and then your first iteration was actually there is something here about the way that brands and companies are being built, and we feel like the community aspect. And that, often we refer to the Bondex community as Bondins, like an army of builders helping build
Oh, nice.
the Bondex platform, helping Bondex achieve its mission of really changing the world of hiring and the world of professional networks. And I feel like what Intract's doing is really, at the forefront of that, of how do you equip and reward that community. I'd love you maybe just to start about like some of the how that journey looked from your first iterations, maybe some of the learns, some of the things that went wrong. Like, I'd love to know specifically, like, what do you think is working and not working with the Quest side?
Yeah, definitely, right. So our journey was definitely not that smooth as our marketing team kind of pushes. So we started as a marketing analytics company, to be honest. So trying to build mixed panel and Web3. That was like for the first few months we kind of spent our time there, kind of burned some money, some time, and realized the space is too nascent, too early. You don't need analytics right now. What you need is basically users and growth. Analytics comes second. It's like a enabler, but not the most important problem in this space. So that's when we kind of drew back, understood, took some time, reflected, spoke to more community members and products to understand what's the problem at hand. And then it's been iterative where we started with first not necessarily having our own distribution, but just relying on our influencer partners, but pretty soon ramping up our own distribution. And what has worked for us, I think a lot of things have worked. So first thing that worked is we have been able to partner with some of the best ecosystems in the space. So there's like applications and there are ecosystems. So when you partner with the ecosystem, you get a lot of marketing support, a lot of brand trust that kind of comes from there. So that's when Polygon, ZKVM, Linea, Starknet, Tabi, Scroll, Bera, all of these different ecosystems have been in touch with us, collaborating with us, and that has led to more users discovering us and working with us. Where to them we are basically a tech service provider. Whatever kind of activations they need, we kind of give them. So that's been one of our biggest growth levers. And then second, on top of that, I think it's just been this constant touch with our community, which happens to be a mix of micro influencers and other users. It's therefore just really aligning their incentives with us. Where if you get us more users, if you do more activations, you get more rewarded. Making sure spams and bots are removed. These kind of things have been like at the forefront of our thinking, and we have executed that quite well. Special shout out to our community ambassador program, which is kind of like the Bonden that you've been talking about, right? That has been instrumental because you will find maybe millions of users, right? But only say 20, 30,000 of them will be super loyal to you, super engaged and sticky. So working with them, understanding their needs and promoting them on a product, helping them out by going beyond your regular ways, like helping them with say teaching them about how to write better content, these kind of things, right, has really helped us develop that bond with our Interact community ambassadors. We're still finding a good name, just like Bonded, like you guys have done to that particular aspect, right? That's like what has worked. What does not work, or what is kind of something that we've been still trying to solve, is again the bot problem. So despite our attempts at stopping bots, stopping spam actors, people in the space are inventive. Once they see rewards, they'll find 50 different ways to game the ecosystem. So just being on top of that game is a constant battle, constant tussle. That's one thing that we have been really thinking a lot about. And another minor, I'll say, hiccup has been just being able to operate in different time zones, right? So today we are primarily Asia with some folks from US, but most of our partners are in different parts of the world, right? And therefore, just being able to manage time zones and coordinate with them effectively is something that has been sort of a challenge. So I've kind of really been thinking about how do we solve for that. So those are the two major challenges at our level. In general, as a questing space, if you think about the trends, one trend that's playing out is you have so many companies creating their own points program, right, which is listed on their own website, and then Quest is just a distribution. So adopting to that is something that has been like a next evolution of this entire space. And we've been thinking about it, launching our own SDK and API solutions, which basically enable anyone to just plug and play their entire website with our questing capabilities. So they save on time on the development effort, while the front end, the website, the brand recall is theirs. So that's another very interesting trend that's playing out. And there's some bit of saturation. That's what, at least I've heard from the community as well, in terms of just in general airdrop and points and quests. So we're kind of dealing with that as well. And that's just, how the meta works. So once a lot of folks got some good airdrops, millions of them kind of aped in, and then now again the ROI has reduced. So we'll see some, users leaving and then going back to meme coin trading and other kind of activities. And then again, there'll be a place where airdrops become attractive. So that's where the meta today is. I know a lot of folks are saying it's cooked. Airdrop points may not exist in the future, but in my opinion, they're just loyalty points, which have been a proven concept in Web 2 as well. So they will continue in Web 3. They need to just evolve, and the expectation of a user from a airdrop points need to change. It's no longer, hey, I'll get millions of dollars. It's actually, hey, I'm helping a community grow. In exchange, they're going to give me fair rewards, fair compensation. So the product and the community has to come first, and the reward has to come second in the mind of the user. And that's how the entire space needs to evolve.
There's so much to unpack there. I'm going to touch on the three things. So I want to touch on the pivot, and then I want to touch on the challenges, and then I'd love to touch on the points. On that pivot, I just want to make a comment. I think it's really interesting in both established spaces, but also in emerging markets, like the Web3 space, to recognize when you're early. And really interesting hearing you say that. A lot of people watching this will be kind of thinking about new products they want to build, thinking about ways they can create a new Web3 idea. But I once had a conversation with the head of technology from McDonald's, and first thing I asked him was how come you've not made robotic kind of burger fryers? A very established market, and this guy's his only role is technology. That's all he looks after. So, and his response was, it's never in McDonald's history, it's never been beneficial to be early in that such established market. And I think a lot of the startup culture we've been told is if you're first, you'll win. But I also think there is an equal weighting in terms of advice on, it's also great to recognize if you're too early. And Web3 analytics, I think there's players like Safari, there's players like Cookie3 and others that are really early and have been kind of proving ground, making ground in that space. But it's also great as well. I feel like you recognize, hey, there's this whole other side around rewards, loyalty, points, community, driving stuff forward. And in my opinion, very smart to make that switch. So that was my only kind of comment. I'd love to go on to those two challenges you said. You said bots and you said time zone. Bondex has had a huge journey so far in terms of user growth, acquisition, 1.6 million monthly active users at a all-time high. And I think one of the things we've definitely battled with is bots. At one point, we even had to switch off access from Nigeria because we had this huge attack coming from Nigeria of just bot after bot after bot hitting our service. And it made it really difficult to know who's real and who's not. And we were able to kind of resolve that after it. I think it took 5 days. But I'd love you to maybe just talk a bit more around that, your perspective on bots in this space. Is there a solution? What should people expect if they are participating in airdrops? And what kind of percentages are you seeing between bots and real people?
Yeah, so I think the first and the core important concept here is identifying when is it profitable to be a bot. And if you can create a game theory based design of a contest or a quest, that doesn't promote that, right? So what I mean by that is, in our case, for example, if you have confirmed token rewards, we definitely see more bots over, if you don't have a confirmed token reward, those kind of things, right? So just being able to understand how the quest design impacts bots is something that has been an eliminating concept for me, because earlier I was what, that is the most least important part. That's probably the most important part. So just being able to design your criteria, your contest in a way that kind of disincentivizes bots is the first level, is probably the most effective frontier that has not yet been explored. And what I mean by that is, so instead of giving tokens, giving discounts on your platform, which makes it more intrinsic than extrinsic, right? Because tokens you can just exit at any some point in time. In fact, I spoke to whale in EdCon Tokyo. So I met Vitalik there, by the way. It was an amazing experience meeting Vitalik in Tokyo. And then I was speaking to a whale, right? And he told me, why don't we have premiums or insurances against, DeFi protocols for me, right? So I'm not interested in a token. But what I'm interested in is if I am, bridging millions of dollars, if it gets hacked, then what, right? So those kind of intrinsic incentives that are no longer, even incentivizing a bot to come on your platform. So that's one entire design space that is yet relatively underexplored. Now that we are also yet still thinking about how do we venture into this, right? That being said, some of the more practical ways that we have come up with filtering bots is that you start with something very simple like a captcha maybe, and then you go step by step ahead, right? So for example, captcha is the first level frontier. Second level frontier is you kind of just before the rewards are being distributed, make sure that there's a proof of humanity attestation, which kind of comes from different providers, including us, including some of our partners like Gitcoin. That's the second level of attestation that you can do. Then the third level comes in where you don't look at anything but just look at on-chain clusters. So kind of like what ZK Sync and Layer Zero did and pioneered in the space, although Hop Protocol and Arbitrum did a while ago as well, right? So just using on-chain data to find clusters. For very simple heuristic that we've seen work is, did you use the same wallet to fund multiple wallets, those kind of things, right? That kind of again, is like the third level of check. And you keep improving the checks, right? Now, every single check, you probably have some false positives, some false negatives. You also have some user experience friction. And that's something that you need to weigh. And you need to kind of always involve your community into it when you're designing the systems. So the one line that I like to always talk about when I'm thinking about bots with my community, with my products, partners are, when you design a system, always involve your community and be iterative in your approach. So you cannot be fixed and flexible, because the day you're fixed, you kind of define this is how you filter bots, and then bots will figure out some other way to game your ecosystem. So you also kind of keep on evolving in that. So that's essentially what I think about the space. In terms of proportion of users versus bots, on our platform, that proportion is quite less. I'll say around 10% of our daily or weekly active users tend to be doing botted behaviors. Now, again, it's still an iterative process of identifying are you really a bot versus just acting like a bot kind of a thing. But that's where we are. But in general, in the space, probably it's quite a lot, especially in ecosystems like Dawn, where you have so many, hundreds of millions of users. I don't imagine they exist in Web3 today, right? So if you're claiming you have hundreds of millions of users, you probably have bots. So that's at least where I am at, right? Yeah.
I think Ton's about to cross 1 billion users. Or they're very, very close to. And I'm like, I don't know if that 1/8 of the population of the world using. I don't know. We'll see. Really cool. And one of the things you mentioned as well earlier was kind of loyalty and rewards. Again, like it's really interesting. I think you go back to the very first arcade games, where you'd get tokens specifically for that arcade that you go to, and you might then use that token to exchange it for value. And we've seen that really kind of play through into loyalty cards, so a supermarket loyalty point scheme, what most people are familiar with. And then kind of coming into Web3, it obviously made a lot of sense for companies, including Bondex, to look at that and say, hey, like, how do we maximize this? I think back in 2023, Apple were very aggressive against iOS development that use and leverage kind of tokenization. It might be even 2002, sorry. And at that point, they had a lot of projects, including our own, then decided, hey, like we've got to really shift here because we can't serve our community with on-chain tokens, and so we've got to go to kind of like a points-based loyalty system, something that has been around, for a long, long time. And hearing you say like, oh, that's also something that you're seeing as well as these kind of points-based systems allowing users to earn points, a lot more tokens. I'd love you to maybe speak into the future trend of that. What are you seeing? What's working? And what are companies doing? And even any great examples you might have.
Yeah, so I think when you think about points, right, there's definitely an improvement over just giving an airdrop from a retrospective criteria. I know some folks will disagree with me in that because they're like, why should we even hint at, what's valuable for the company? If you're a user, you understand that you do it on your own. Like Arbitrum did a retrospective airdrop, ZK Sync did the same thing, right? But Blast kind of pioneered it quite well with their points program, and since then, a lot of companies are doing it. And they're definitely an improvement. 2-3 reasons. Number one, it helps you to be more regulatorily sound in driving the hype around your product without releasing a token, and therefore it gives you more time to experiment, iterate, find your product market fit without the legal complications of launching a token. Secondly, it also is a right step in the direction of transparency. So what I mean by that is now you're telling your users, your community, what's valuable and directing their behavior towards doing those activities, versus otherwise when they don't even know what they're doing and kind of just doing whatever they want to do. So those are some advantages of the points program, right? And in terms of the future of points, right? So lot of things have been talked about how points probably are now overcooked, will not work. But like I mentioned, they'll continue to exist. Their form, their evolution is something that we have started seeing already. So, for example, one major trend that at least we have seen in some of our partners is they want to host point program on their own websites and not anywhere else. Second major trend that we're seeing is the points that you give will no longer be same for every user. So what I mean by that is if you're a high quality user, if you share me your open wallet graph, you probably get better points, right? Those points are reflective of your on-chain reputation, your contributions not just to this product but to the entire on-chain economy. And that's where what I was talking about, the token holder propensity score. So for example, if you have a label saying this user holds tokens when they give it, probably you get more points because of that, right? So kind of also making sure the right points and hence the right tokens or airdrops go to the right kind of users. And a second corollary of that will be something like a personalized points program. So if I identify you're an influencer, I probably give you more points for referrals than depositing more money. Like there's this very beautiful framework that I heard. So time rich, money rich, and skill rich. So today, most points program is just time or money. Deposit a lot of money, get airdrops, do a lot of activities, get airdrop. But what about skill, right? If I write good content for you, probably sort of going to give me more points. If I kind of help you connect to the right kind of ecosystem partners, you kind of get more points. So being more credentials based, more rich metadata of your contributions, and that defining points is something that at least I have been seeing a lot of conversations around. And the proof of humanity and bots are a small part of it, but that's just the start. That's the filtering criteria, but not probably the allocation criteria. That depends more on rich contribution metadata and history, right? Then I think the third trend, and this is something that I'm not sure it's a trend, it's more like something that we have been conflicted about internally, is how long do you execute a points program, right? Do you do it for 2 years and then do a token airdrop? Do it for 1 year, they do a season, then season one, season two, season three. These kind of things are something that has been at least on top of our head of our partners as well. It has led to something like low float, high FDV kind of a scenario. I'm not sure if you know, which basically means you launch at a very small market cap with a very high fully diluted value. And that has led to a lot of selling pressure on tokens. So those kind of consequences of multiple seasons of airdrops have come, but then that's still in the right direction, because if you do 100% community supply just at once, then probably that's the biggest impact they've created, and you can no longer drive behaviors as you might have seen with companies like Uniswap, for example. So that's there. One specific company that I like to highlight is Optimism. So they are not necessarily doing a points program, but they did a retro PGF grant, which is pretty cool, right? So you just kind of registered as a builder saying, you know what, I want to build on Optimism. And then there was some criteria like how many users you drove, how many smart contracts you deployed, what was the quality of smart contracts. And then retrospectively, you were given, Optimism tokens as rewards for your contribution to the product. So it was never done immediately. You were not even told how much you will get. It was just that you register. If you're doing well, we'll give you rewards. So that was a pretty interesting way of executing some sort of a loyalty points program, but more focused on builders. In terms of users facing points program, honestly, seeing similar things pop up everywhere. Like I mentioned, Blast was a great example of gamification. Although, after their airdrop, the activity has died down. So not sure how much of a effective retention it drove. So that's something that at least was the North Star inspiration for a lot of points program to come in. And I think I like Initia also quite a lot. So their points program is pretty cool. The reason being they are not at all, they don't have a lot of bugs even on testnet in terms of interactions, in terms of whatever they're doing. And that's important because often if you're early, you have a lot of bugs, a lot of issues, and the points program then don't really give you an impact because users get frustrated. So kind of a shout out to them for their execution. So that's roughly some examples.
Yeah. Let me jump on that, because I think even with Bondex, I've been with the company for coming up to 10 months now, I think. And even like in our early development, we would have a lot of bugs. Kind of, we'd sometimes see the points would reset to 0, and users would freak out. It's like, no, it's not reset. It's just a small glitch, and it really does create that wobble, right? And I think it's really important for a company to constantly to build trust with their community, and I think that's an interesting approach as well, which is making sure that the very first iteration is incredibly robust, which is very hard with product. It goes against the trend of to move quickly and break things, or move fast and break things. Yeah, really interesting. I'd love you to maybe, like, we've spoken a lot about the way companies and Web3 brands should build, the way they should kind of think about the quests or the point systems. I'd love to kind of like reverse engineer this and actually say, what, from a community member point of view, what are some of the things that they should be thinking about in terms of what makes a great community member? And so for us, it's our bondings. For you still come up with a name for Intract, but I'm sure you'll find a great one for the community. But what makes a great community member in your eyes? And maybe if you have any sort of great examples there, that'd be really cool to hear.
Yeah, I think the biggest sign of a great community member is you don't ask for a reward. You just come, understand the community, the product, understand how you can contribute first, right? That's the first and the foremost signal that you're here for the community, for the product, and not necessarily for the reward that you may or may not get. So the way I put it is, intrinsically, if you're motivated to be a part of a product, that's like sign number one, the green flag for which you're welcome to join the community. And then over time, I think what's also important is for you to identify your core capability, right? And being able to do those kind of actions versus trying everything out. So for example, we have our ambassadors who were like very good at writing content, also trying affiliates, those kind of things. Didn't work out. Eventually now we have tracks, right? So you're good at getting us businesses, good at writing content, good at using user support. So being able to identify your niche, your core contribution skill sets, and being able to do those kind of things. That's the second important thing, being self-aware about the kind of skill sets that you have, right? And then sort of, doing that. And probably the third one that I'd also say is being more involved in not just doing the tasks, but actually asking the right questions so that, you can give us feedback, you can help us with understanding where to go next, because that's probably the biggest role of community at the very start, shaping the vision, the direction of the product. So those two things kind of are very important. And the way you kind of measure it is different in different organizations. For us, it's a measurement of how active are you on Discord, quality wise, plus are you really using our product? Because if you're just active on Discord but not using the product, you're probably not the best person to give feedback. And also then some combination of your on-chain history as well. Because for us, our products have different tracks. We have Intract Academy, which is for totally new to Web3 users. Then we have our pro products that are for more advanced users. So just being able to also track that on-chain reputation, and using all of that identity and credentials, we're probably able to identify the most engaged community members or the most important community members. But the number one point which I mentioned is the most important one, which is just using the product because you like the product. You don't necessarily just grind about asking when token, or just go mad about the roadmap of a product because it's just JD. Because these things happen. Also, it's important for the community leaders to be transparent about everything. That's definitely there. But then being patient is like one of the most important traits that I've mentioned. So for example, today, right now, we have around 2,000 user support tickets open on our website. Wow. And out of that, around 1,100 people are just going crazy. They don't want to wait even for a second. When you've told them we'll resolve things in like the next 12 hours, 24 hours, but they're still badgering us with messages, right? Now that's okay. I understand you're kind of insecure about the reward, but at the same time, if you're just patient with us, right, you'll get whatever you want. So this is another very important trait that at least right now is top of our mind, that if I'm not a patient community member, then I'm probably not the best community member as well. Because if you build a company, it takes time, and sometimes things go south, right? So
yeah, it's interesting. In this space, there's a lot of things that happen so quickly. I think, again, from Bondex's point of view, our roadmap's like our first 1 million users, and we did that in under 12 months. And that was just mental, a crazy level of growth. You think of how quickly for LinkedIn to get that number, or for Instagram, it's take years of product building. And in Web3, things happen so fast. It's interesting you say about patience as well. So one of the things that we've done recently is actually we've had to delay our TGE. And it's caused a lot of upset, as you can imagine. I think everyone's like, hang on, guys, like, I thought you were going to delay. And so, you know, a lot of people are letting us know they're not particularly happy about it. And I think that, you know, the reason we delayed it was essentially the tier one exchange kind of reached out and wanted to create, you know, push that back, push the exchange date back. And, you know, if it's a tier one exchange, you make sure you do as you're told. And I feel like for us, we want to make sure that, as you mentioned there, things that are built really well and sustainably, and aren't just rushed, and aren't just like, hey, we'll just move as fast as possible, and appeasing often the very loud voices that come through of, hey, just give me what I want right now. So it's really interesting to see. And yeah, we're very aware of time. We're about to finish here. I just want to say thank you so much. But before we do wrap up, is there anything else that you want to share? Anything that we've not spoken about today that you think actually this would be quite cool to let everyone know?
I think for anyone in the conversation here, if you ever feel any doubts about building a community, feel free to reach out to us. We in fact have our own blog on growth, just like, you know, Paul's amazing Web3 marketing DAO resources. So we kind of, you know, help and consult different kind of products and growth as well. And then on the product launch side, I kind of mentioned Ton. Ton goes live like in a week's time. So you can see our Telegram version of a quest, where on the Telegram itself, we can kind of, you know, do a lot of activities. So that's something you guys can look out for. And whenever Intern launches, you will see me shouting at the top of my voice, talking about our AI product Intern. It's called Intern. It's just an AI product where basically you kind of ask questions. I've been using it quite frequently. It has helped me, you know, stay up to date with so much noise on Twitter. So that's roughly on what we kind of have on our plate. And yeah, do watch it for the Bondex campaign as well that Intract is hosting, right? We hope to, like, you know, get Bondex some very good users. At the same time, let our users learn more about Bondex more and more. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, let me just double on that, because I love to hear about your Ton campaign. Really cool that you're building that out. I think, you know, we're working together on our Bunny Blitz mini app. So for those that don't know, we've got a mini app. It's very like the mini apps that are out there in terms of the look and feel. But we're actually we put $1 million of rewards behind it, which is massive, like $1 million of BDX10. We've done this to really help kind of fill that gap between now and TGE. And for those who are interested, please check it out, Bunny Blitz, and you'll also see a fantastic campaign coming up very soon on Intract, which we're excited about. So Apurv, I just want to say thank you very much for your time. This has been really interesting. And thanks for the shout out as well on marketing. Yeah. I love that. I mean, why not? Good stuff. Okay. Great, thank you guys. And Bondex, thank you very much for joining in. And we will see you. We've got a fantastic one again next week for Bondex Talks, and you'll be hearing about that very shortly. Apurv, thanks again. And guys, see you all again soon.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.